See, the Earth's crust is kind of interesting. Pretty thin, actually, in some spots. 3 to 5 miles thick under the crust, under the oceans, and 30 miles thick under the continents. The hot water from inside the Earth would come shooting out, and it would kill animals that live within a certain radius of the crack as the hot water escaped. As the basalt bulged up in the middle, the plates are going to slide down, explaining, as I said earlier, about the wrinkled mountains. Take a look at these mountains in British Columbia. They've been pressed from the end, wrinkled up. What happened? As the water came shooting out, the hot water would kill all sorts of things within a certain radius. If you poured a gallon of boiling water into your aquarium, it would kill all the fishies within a certain distance, okay, till the temperature was dissipated. All over the world, little tiny creatures called diatoms are found dead in great big thick beds called diatomaceous earth. These diatoms are super tiny. It takes about 1,000 years to get an inch of dead diatoms at the bottom of the ocean. They very slowly accumulate. When it dries out, they pack it into a special powder called diatomaceous earth. It is used for all sorts of things. It's used as kitty litter. It's used as oil dye. Diatomaceous earth is used as swimming pool filters, used in bricks, used in aspirin. It's used in medicines. It's used in all sorts of strange things you would never think of. It's diatomaceous earth because it is so absorbent. I was in Lompoc, California preaching, and I went to visit the world's largest diatomaceous earth quarry. I believe it's the world's largest. They're in Lompoc, California, which is right smack on top of the San Andreas Fault. There in Lompoc, California, back in 1976, they found the fossil skeleton of a whale standing on end, 80 feet long, running through diatomaceous earth. Now, I know the whale is parallel with the layers. That's okay, because the layers have tilted up also. So the thickness of the whale becomes the problem, not the length. But still, if this stuff accumulates an inch every 1,000 years, how long is a dead whale going to lay there waiting for this stuff to gather around him? Dead whales are dissolved at the bottom of the ocean in a few weeks or months. Even the bones eventually disappear. They gave me a chunk of their diatomaceous earth out there. In that one little square foot, there are dozens, maybe even up to 60 fish skeletons. You know, fish skeletons are found in diatomaceous earth, and they're found with their gills extended, their fins extended. They died terrified. Whatever was happening to them was terrifying these creatures. Fossil fish are found by the trillions. The chalk cliffs of England and Dover, England are found this way. Chalk, from the Latin word crescia, which means chalk. Chalk 300 feet thick. There was a catastrophe that formed all this. The Bible says the waters prevailed upon the earth. I think what happened during the first part of the flood, dead things settled out. And that flood represents God's judgment on this planet. Point number 5 of the Hovind theory is during the first few months of the flood, the dead animals would settle out. People ask, why aren't more human fossils found? Well, humans are smarter than animals. Some humans are, and some animals. And they would tend to avoid drowning till the last possible minute. Animals that are buried on top or very, very shallow soil are not going to fossilize. Think of all the millions of buffalo that were killed out west in the last few hundred years. None of them fossilized because they weren't buried. So fossils only form if an animal is buried pretty deeply and pretty quickly before it has time to decay. Marvin Lubenow says about 4,000 sets of human remains have been found. I think there are fewer humans than animals found fossilized because they were smarter and would avoid drowning till later in the flood, and therefore they're not going to be fossilized. We cover more on that in video 7. The trees that are uprooted would float around in big log mats the size of Texas. They're going to be buried and become the coal seams that we see today. Moving water does some very interesting phenomena. As water is moving, it automatically sorts things. It can form 5 or 6 layers simultaneously. There's a good videotape called Experiments in Stratification that shows the top strata can actually be older than the bottom strata. If the water's moving, it forms multiple layers simultaneously. Moving water does some strange things. How many have ever seen those things you buy at the store with 2 pieces of glass and different colored sand in between, and when you flip it over, it forms all these layers real quickly, okay? It doesn't take a long time. Stratification can happen very quickly. Underwater landslides, like the one we saw in Indonesia in 2004, can cause, it's called a turbidity current. They can do enormous damage underwater, causing tsunamis on the surface, which kill 250,000 people. In 1929, there was an underwater landslide that traveled 70 miles an hour, cut 2 transatlantic cables. That one landslide covered 40,000 square miles. That's about the size of Ohio. One landslide underwater.